So here we are today. We're going to be pulling the bed off. So I'm going to get down there, start pulling some wires down and get all that stuff out of the way. Make sure there's nothing else connected that's going to keep us from getting this bad boy off. And then I'm hoping me and Mr. Dan are going to be strong enough to carry it out. But we'll see. So here we go. Here we are, we got the bed off, and so now we can look at all these mounts and everything. So this dude made all of this. This is a Mustang 88 out of like a 2004, and then he made all of his brackets and everything. My concern is that the pinion angle is far too steep. So when we get the motor in and the transmission in, we're going to be able to adjust that. And so what I'm really hoping is I can just adjust mounts, because I don't want to change the length of any of the arms, because right now, in theory, I should be able to buy any kit for a 2004 Mustang. So like when I go to do QA1, I don't want to change any of the lengths of any of the arms, because right now it's all factory, and that's what I would really like to stay, just to keep everything simple and easy peasy. So with that in mind, we'll keep pushing forward on that and getting some stuff cleaned up. All right, well, we got the bed out, so we just grabbed a couple 4x4s, built some cribbage there so it's sitting up off the ground. But let's get back in there on the truck. I'm gonna go ahead and proactively spray a little looby-dooby on everything. You know, it's gonna make it harder to paint, but hey, this stuff looks a little crusty. I already hit it once. Ain't no problem hitting it twice. Maybe even hit it thrice. So what we're going to start off with is we're going to take the old digital level. I took a piece of tape, and we're going to need to get our three measurements. So I got M for motor, D for driveline, and R for rear end. I don't have driveline, so hopefully this all works out by skipping the old driveline step. But what we're going to do is we're going to throw this bad boy on here. We're going to figure out what the angle is. So 88. Go ahead and hold on that. 88.2. Let me write that on there, and then we'll go back and do the driveline, and then we'll convert it. I wrote that on there. Obviously, we're at 88. Oh, come on, focus. 88's going to be, it was 88.2, which is going to be 2.2 degrees of down tilt. Now, we'll throw it bad boy on here. Click off the hold. This is going to be not good. We are at 83.8. Whoop, back on that. So that's 7.8 of up tilt on that pinion. So we got some work to do. All right, so I grabbed the driveline for the Nova, which is not the same splines as this T56 as that Turbo 350, but it sticks in there enough. I think that we'll be able to get an idea if we maybe do that. So 2.4, 2.5, we'll call it 2.5 of driveline angle. So we'll throw that in there. We'll go plug that. I already wrote it on there. We'll go plug that into the calculator and see what it says. Obviously, that's 7 degrees of up tilt is not good. Once again, I went ahead and threw all my angles in. I'm going to throw a little picture up on the side. What I did is I just corrected the pinion angle until we get, they say you want within 2 degrees of each other, right? So I'm going to get them as close as I possibly can, and it's looking like anywhere between 2 to 3 degrees of upward pinion angle on this rear end is what we're going to want for the sweet spot. So what I did is I just changed that value until I got my driveline and my motor to match within that 2 degree variable, if that makes sense. So I know I need to get my rear end to be in between 2 and 3 degrees of up, and then we'll have our proper pinion angle. So now we have a number to shoot for, and obviously we'll just be checking that all in there. We're not going to be adjusting any of the lower control arms. That way our wheel placement stays the same in the wheel well of the bed. What I'm going to start doing is we're going to get these brake lines out of the way, and we're going to get the frame up to relax. That way it's not under load. And then we're going to get this cross member cut, and then I'm gonna mark it on the frame, and we're gonna move this cross member forward, and then I'll tack weld it, put it under load until we get that angle we want. Then we can mark out the frame, and then we can build a new cross member, new tabs, new 4-link bars, and start over from proper pinion angle. Then we can get a driveline measurement, we can get a driveline made. So we're cooking with gas. I got shocks, I got the dampeners off. I only snapped off one of the shock bolts, which whatever, we're gonna have to remake all this action anyways. So next step, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and unbolt these upper arms and roll that rear end forward just to kind of get a look, make sure that those bolts are usable and all that, and roll that forward, make sure nothing changes, make sure it rolls how I think it's gonna roll, and then if it does, then we'll go ahead and we'll cut that mount out. And like I said, I'm just gonna move it forward, and then I'm gonna tack weld it into place. We're gonna move it. I did some marks on the frame here. Can't really see. Original mark 17 inches from this cross member. It's equal on both sides. We're gonna move it forward a 1/2 of an inch at a time and see what that does, what that translates on the pinion. So let's keep pushing. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that didn't take us very long to realize we weren't gonna be able to do that. So let me bring you in here. You can probably see the problem with this design. I mean, it worked getting it in there, but I mean, I guess you could take it off down here, and then you could take it off, but you could never get those upper arms off. So I am going to be replacing those with the QA1 adjustable ones, which I'd never be able to do. So I guess that's one thing we're going to have to address as well. Maybe on that box side of the frame, we're going to have to cut a notch in or something, do something there. We'll figure that out once we get that far, but it looks like right now we're going to have to cut those mounts, move that cross member forward. So one thing that I am looking at, because I want to keep the relative geometry of what is already here. Obviously it looks like it's pretty square. If I cut this right here, like my plan is to just cut this flush with the face, that way I can just roll this whole thing forward. This mount is not going to be connected to anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the top of this, and I'm just going to go grab a piece of scrap metal, and I'm going to tack it onto here, and then I'm going to tack it onto this face. That way this mount doesn't move, and we can keep all that together. I'm going to have to do it on this side as well. That way I can just cut through that, but then this stays square onto that. So let's go cut up two pieces of metal, clean that up, tack weld that in, then we'll cut this thing out. Mark this on this face. I'm not going to get crazy with this at all. And then we're going to just do this. So that'll be for the right side. And then I'll throw this over here, and we'll just do the same thing. I think I'll use that same angle for that. And I'll do that. Left side. Meh, that'll work. Bring you in here. So like I said, I just put a tab there, that way we can cut along that side, and a tab there so we can cut along that side. And you know, I'm gonna go ahead, I think I'm just gonna final weld those into place, that way I don't have to worry about them moving around. So let's do that real quick and then start cutting. Solomon got this thing cut loose. So just by cutting it loose and moving it, I mean, 1/8 of an inch, that changed the pinion angle dramatically. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna split the difference. I'm gonna do a quarter. We're gonna tack this side, then we're gonna do a quarter and tack that side, and then we're gonna let it relax and see where we're at on the pinion angle. So we got 1-2 more steps to do, get some measuring, make sure it's square, and then go ahead and I'll bring you in, we'll check. Bring you back in here. We're down on the ground. We're off the jack stands. We were at 83, which was 83.7, which is 7 degrees of pinion angle. Now we are at 86.8, so 4 degrees of pinion angle. We need to get 1 more degree out of it, so we're going to need to push forward. Probably that 1/2 inch that I guessed is probably going to be perfect. So we'll cut these 2 welds off, we'll roll it forward another 1/4 inch, and hopefully we'll pick up another degree and a half, because we need to be between 2 and 3 to have our motor and the rear end within the 2 degrees that they need to be. So round 2. Big old booger weld. I had to cut that thing off like 3 or 4 times, but we are now, final placement on that, we are at 88.7. So we'll call that plus some change. The engine was at 3 degrees, driveline was at 3 degrees. Put those in the calculator. It's average for number 1 is 1, average 2 is 1.5. So we are still within our 2 degrees. We're gonna be like 1 1/4, which I'm completely happy with that. So we got the frame marked out. We need to take off the upper control arms and get both of those off so we can get the upper mount out, and start working on the new mount. And into something and kind of just adjust it on the fly. Where the old cross member went into the frame, it's welded at the frame, welded into this box that he made for the C-notch. It's on obviously both sides. So what I did is I just grabbed some plate steel, made a template out of the old cardboard as usual. And I painted the inside with rust neutralizing paint. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to plate this like so. Put that plate on there. And then when I build my cross member is going to step. So it'll go into the frame on this side, and then it'll go to the face of that plate on this side. I'll obviously clean all that, treat that. So let's get these plates tacked on, and then we can get our cross member cut and get it temped in there. Here it is. So I just transferred over the frame measurement. It's 35.5 inside to inside. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I'm going to hit it with the contour tool so it's nice and clean. But that's going to be our new cross member, and the way I'm going to lay it out is obviously I'm going to step it. So I'm going to cut that 2x, boop. So it's going to go on the outside of this, which I'll be able to weld this face, and then it's going to slide in and go all the way to the inside of the frame rail on both sides, which I'll be able to weld that as well as the bottom, and that'll be that whole inside mount. Honestly, kind of thinking about making a bolt. Nah, this needs to be welded. I'm going to weld this. A little wrestling on that thick old 2x4, but we got it cut. I got a nice gap for welding. So like I said, I notched it. Bring it around the other side. So it's going to go to that plate that I made for the box where the old one is, and then the inside is going to go all the way back to the frame. We'll get that cleaned. But I want to get it up in here, mocked up in here. That way we can, you know what I think I might do? I think I might notch that so this comes up flush. So I'll have to take that down. Well, I'll mark that out. But now we can figure out, bring that boy up top and figure out our tabs for the upper 4-link bars. So I'm gonna, excuse the door, bring you back in here. Made a couple things off camera. So I got a template made. I'm just gonna make a rough template, then I'll be able to make all of them the different lengths. But I went ahead and notched this, so this bad boy will sit like that. And then I'll bevel that nice and clear so I can weld it in. I got my angles for those two. Like I said, I'm going to have to make these all generically, and then I'll cut them to the length. Because we're going to have one there at that angle, then we're going to have one there at that angle. And obviously this is not ideal, so what I think I'm going to have to do is I'll make this bracket like that with the 45, and then I'll be able to weld that mount to the inside of the frame, top, bottom, inside, before I put this in. So I'll get that one in, that'll go like that, that'll go there. But the other problem I had is the same thing as when I took it apart, is getting bolts in there. So what I'm going to do is I trace that line right there, drew a center hole. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1.5 inch pipe, I'm going to cut a hole in this running at that angle, so that pipe will come out this side, flush weld, so you can put a socket in there, and you can pull the bolt through the cross member to get the bolt out on the upper arms, because I want to be able to take it all apart. So I'm going to have to do 2 sleeves, one on either side, to get the bolts in and out. But I don't know any other way to do it. All right, so I figure I'll bring you all in here. Cross member temped in, everything's all cut. I got my first set of mounts temped in. That's how we're going to be running them. So I'm going to pull those out, transfer them to there, get these ones cut, and then we'll start getting stuff tacked in. But pinion angle's where it needs to be. I'm liking where the mounts are, and I mean, really, we'll get these inside ones tacked where they need to live. The outside ones can get tacked onto the cross member, and then what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to have to cut holes through the cross member so that way we can get these bolts out. So I'll be a little more fab work, but it's going to be worth it. Well, I got the tabs in, so I went ahead, put the square on there, measured down to that inside tab. It's 1 3/16 inch, 1 3/16 on there. Same thing with the outside tabs. I cut those at a different angle just to get them as meaty as I can, but with the flat top. I might cut them again to make them match that side, but I honestly don't mind it. It's bigger surface area on that inside, so I like that. I know that's going to work. We're going to go ahead and get the holes cut in the cross member, so that way we can take the bolts out through, because obviously they're going to fit. They're going to hit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to plasma cut a hole in here, put a sleeve through it, so that way we can take the bolts out through the cross member and be able to get to those upper control arms. So we're going to do that, finish welding the plates on the frame, then we'll put it all back together, tack weld everything, make sure everything looks good. Check our pinion angle one more time. I know it's all good, but we'll just double check before we final weld everything, and then we'll get to welding. All right, well, I think I got all my measurements on the cross member that I need to have on the cross member. And, you know, I'm sure there's some 4-link wizard out there that's watching this, maybe. If you are out there, I'm sorry. Because, you know, it kind of worked before, and I think it's going to kind of work better. So I made sure my pinion, I'm supposed to be between 2 and 3 degrees with what my motor and driveline say. So I'm right at 2 degrees. I'm like 2.3 degrees. So that way I figured weight of the bed, weight of all that, that's going to bring it up a little bit. So we should be right in the sweet spot, in theory. I got all my marks for sleeving for the bolts to go through. So those are there, so that way I can lay that out. I got my marks here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transfer this line completely across. That way I can put these 2 tabs in the same exact spot, weld them in. Control arms claim the frame. I got plenty of room there, so they're not going to hit the bed or do any of that jazzle. So I think it's time to pull it out and get cutting. Once again, thanks for watching. There will be a second part to this video where I'm going to be sleeving that cross member, fully building the cross member, final welding everything, prepping for paint, painting the frame, building shock mounts. So quite a bit more to come on this next one. So stay tuned for that. But as always, thanks for watching, and until the next time.